right, let's talk performance and optimization. First off, the guys that created this Arborist program did a magnificent job with optimization. So all of these trees have been created with that in mind. So you don't have to get crazy with this stuff, but on courses like this one, that is very tree dense, as you can see, there's a few little things you can do to help things along the way. When we talk about performance drains, we're going to talk about CPU bounding and GPU bounding. And CPU is going to be more your biomes. Okay, so we talked a little bit about it when we were doing biomes. So all of these biome mask nodes, the CPU has to read these, and the more nodes, the more heavy it gets. So you want to try to get as few nodes as possible. When it's a long line, just do one or two, three across there. You don't have to do one every 5 feet. So you want to try to keep your nodes at a minimum. Obviously, you need them, but use as few as possible. The other thing that will be CPU heavy is the amount of items that you have in here. When John and I are checking courses, you would be amazed at how many different items people will put in a biome, and you just don't need it. And we've already talked about that, so I'm not going to dwell on that. We've talked about that in creating the biomes, but you don't need a lot of items. I mean, that's period. You just don't. So those two things are going to be your main CPU bounding areas. The GPU is the actual rendering of the items. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Couple of different things. Let's get to my edit. Let's get a biome up first. Let's go boreal forest. So we're going to work mainly with this one down the left side to start with. And when we talk performance, there's several things we can do. Now, all of this is going to be individual items. If you want to get really crazy, you can go into vegetation and you can change it globally here. So you can change your render distance on your grasses, on your trees, your billboards, your LODs. I am very, very, very hesitant to change very much of this because the guys went through a lot of trouble optimizing this stuff. They know it inside and out, so I just almost never touch this. You can just know, and there's a red warning at the top, just know what you're doing before you start messing with this. So I typically will go in to the actual edit the biome and do them individually. So we talked about position. So if you've got it really, really, really thick, then it's going to affect performance. So you can, let's see one I've got here. The pine would be a good one to do. Let's isolate that. So, if you're having some performance issues, you can reduce these. And when I'm reducing them, I don't isolate them. Once I've got my biome made. So let's say this biome here, I'm wanting to thin it out just a little bit. So I like to do it with the whole thing up. That way you can see what it's doing. And you can look even here in the distance. So if we reduce this one just a little, I mean, that's reduced that a bunch. You can barely tell. Put it back where it was. You can do this with your sample distance, or you can, an easy way to do it, if you like where everything is, instead of changing the position, you can play with the density. And you can see I've already done it. I mean, this is one I've already optimized, so we're just playing with it. So if I took that density back up, I mean, yeah, it looks like a really thick forest, okay? But the performance on that, and you can see this number down here at the bottom. I keep this on F when I'm playing with it. I mean, you can see this number change down into the low 80s, reduce it way back, and it still looks like a nice forest, and we're up into the hundreds. So just that one tree changing the density changed my performance of that much. So that's changing the density of an item. The other thing we can do is the LOD setting on an item. The pine tree is not going to make a ton of difference. Tell you what, let's go back where we can make it make a difference. So let's say we had it really heavy. Let's go way up here. All right, so we're back down into the low 80s. And let's get a little closer here. You can change the LOD on some of the, see, it didn't make much difference at all there. Now, if you extend it out, it does. So if I got this where it's rendering LOD 0 way out there, it's going to make a difference. But when I reduce it back, it doesn't make much of a difference. The main one that I use the LOD change on is some of the CE trees. He's got those really high tries. They look fabulous, but there's not a lot of difference between LOD 0 and LOD 1 in the look. Let's see if I've got one in this biome. Let's find one. The con, that's one that's pretty heavy. All right, so there we go. So that LOD, let's look at it right here. If we extend that LOD way out, it's going to really change our frames per second. So I usually knock that one way down. One other place we can play with, let's get that back to full forest. Well, I'll leave it thick like this. That'll be a good one to play with. So the other area is general on render distance. So on this pine tree, back up a little bit here where I've got them all. So I'm down in the low 70s right now. If I extend this render distance out to the full 600, that didn't affect it too much. Pine tree's not a real heavy performance tree. Actually, that's not changing, is it? Oh, no wonder. I've got it on the con. So make sure you're on the right tree. Let's go back. Which one was it? Was it that one? Yeah. All right. So there we go. Now let's play with this one with the render distance. I keep the pines out pretty far because, like I said, they're not a huge performance drain. But if I extend it out, you can see the number drop. If I start pulling it back and we turn them all into billboards, the performance number will get a little bit better. I never want to bring them that far back, but pine trees I can leave in that 400 or so range. So that's adjusting a biome to help with performance. So the other thing we can do, and I definitely did here, is we can create a billboard only biome. So instead of this having to render all of these trees, I've got these trees cut right here, and I've got billboards out here. I don't think I can see if I can make it show. I don't know if I can or not. Marker size. Yeah, you can kind of see the marker there. So what I'll do is I'll create my billboard biome, and then I make it a higher priority. We talked about priorities, the sort order in a different one. And then I can bring it in. So if I'm trying to bring it in a little bit closer, I can bring it in a little bit closer. You want to make sure that you don't get it too close, because I'm going to talk about making a billboard biome here in a second. And I take colliders off of the billboards. It helps with performance. All right, so let's talk about making a billboard biome. The easiest way to make a billboard biome is with the copy and paste. So I'm going to go, we're going to do this for you real quick. Biome. We're going to make a new biome. We're going to call this test billboard. Test billboard. Do not make it default. If you make a biome default, it plants everywhere. So let's leave default for special situations when you're using vegetation items. If you're using a default biome, you want to make sure you're using vegetation items and vegetation rules so that it does not plant everywhere. We can call this, what's one I'm not using? Let's make it 8. All right, so let's go to Edit Biomes. And we're going to take this Boreal Forest items and we're going to move them into that billboard. So I would take, let's say we'll take the con, copy, and we're going to take it into that one we just created, and we're going to paste it. Let's go back to the main tree. Let's take a pine tree, copy, take it back into my billboard biome and paste it. All right, so then we're going to do a couple of things with these two items because we want these to not render. We want them to only be billboards. So we're going to, the render distance, we want to change it to 0. That way it never renders. It is always a billboard. All right. Position, you can play with that just like any other biome. The other thing we want to do on these, and you can do this a couple of ways. If it's way out and it's not showing at all, you can disable shadows on everything. What I found works really good so that you don't get such a hard line with no shadows is I'll disable shadows on all except for one of the trees in the billboard biome. And that way you still have a little bit of shadow that shows up and it's not such a hard line. But I'll disable shadows on everything other than one tree. And then in colliders, we are going to go disable. And that is going to create a billboard item of that pine tree. You have to then do the same exact thing on the other one. So it's individual items. You've got to change this on every one of them. Render distance, 0. So if this was the case, I would leave some shadows on this one and just not have them on the pine. And then colliders, we're going to take the colliders off. So now I have a billboard biome with this con and a pine. And let's say, let's put it in this one. We'll see what it looks like. So we can go, what is that right now? Scrub forest billboards, where I can change it back. All right, so there's that one that we just created. We fly in here. Doesn't look like there's any shadows. I think that's in maybe my global settings. I don't have any shadows set on billboards. I may have them totally disabled because I have my billboards so far out. I'm not worried about it. I don't have that hard line. That's only going to be if you've got something where you bring it really in close. Let's go back to my main one. And that shows you how easy it is to switch, an item in a biome mask. Just click. So that's kind of got the performance basics. There's a few other little tricks you can do, but that has got the majority of it. And with that, you can really, really improve the performance of your course.